Okay, so we are continuing. From last class, we discussed the fourth bracha of the Amidah. Fourth bracha was all about da'as, bina, haskel, and we discussed the different aspects of knowledge. And now that we have knowledge, we asked God for knowledge. Now we're able to move on to the next need, which is the Teshuva. Right? We're not always perfect, and we need to ask God to help us that we should come back and return. So let me just read the bracha, point out a few questions, and then we'll discuss general ideas of Teshuva, and from there we will connect it to the bird, the idea of the class. So Hashiveinu Avinu l'sarasecha, our Father, return us, bring us back to your Torah. The V'karavenu Malkeinu l'avodasecha, our King, bring us close to your service. V'achazirenu b'shuva shalema l'fanecha, and you shall return us with complete teshuva before you. Baruch atah Hashem, harotza b'shuva. Blessed are you, God, that He wants teshuva. He wants a teshuva. So there's a number of questions here, just in the organization and the wording. First of all, there's three different expressions of seemingly the same idea. They're all expressions of asking God to bring us back. Hashiveinu, karveinu, hachazirenu, bring us back. Bring us close, return us. What's the difference exactly? What are the specific differences between them? Each of them has a different end of the sentence. Hashiveinu goes together with Torah. The second one is karveinu, bring us close, is avoda. Hachazirenu is general, teshuva shalema. Why do we have one singled out for each word? And then finally, you begin with Avinu. We know God is our Father, God is our King. But why is it that by Hashiveinu and Torah, there we call God as Avinu, our Father? By Karveinu and Avoda, bring us close to your Avoda, we refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Malkeinu, our King. And the last one, finally, there's no mention at all. Hakazirenu, just bring us back. Lefanecha, before you. There's no specific name. So how do we understand? So we're going to come back. These are the basic questions on the bracha, and we'll come back with an amazing classification here of three different aspects that we're trying to do teshuva upon. But before we get there, let us take a general pause for general fundamental ideas in teshuva, and we'll explain how the bird is of the orev, which is going to be it's the fifth bird in the list, both in the list in Shemoneh and in the list in sefer Devarim and Re'eh. It's going to be the orev, the family of usually most people. It's always identified as the raven. Some people want to say it's the crow family, but let's just work with the raven for a moment. So let's look at what teshuva is. So teshuva, Rabbi Yeshua here sets up three fundamental aspects, ideas that we know and are pretty famous, but we'll just speak them through, that are connected to teshuva. The first idea he discusses is the color, which is used to describe traveling from being one who sins to the one who eventually comes back and does teshuva, repents, and comes back to God. What does that mean? We find in the psukim, the verses, referring to one who is a chote, a sinner, as a shechora, dirty, he's black, right? Meaning there's a dirtiness to him, to his soul, his neshama. The pasuk in Shir Shirim, if anyone says that every week, or we say shechora ani, I'm black, and then the next pasuk talks about how the sun had tans the man, and eventually he hopefully comes back to Teshuva, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The idea in that pasuk is that the sun is tanning us. It's all on the outside. Really within we have the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's always there. We're close. But there's just a tanning up more external. But regardless, it calls it as shechora. There's a pasuk in the Navi, Kipnei kushiyim atemli, referring to one who's a chote as he's dirty in that way.
Kushi, that's like kushi, like the kushis?
Yeah, but you're right. But in context of here, it's just referring to a dirtiness. But right, that's how we're supposed to.
But for kushis, is that pejorative? That's just.
No, it's not actually referring to that sect of human beings. It's just a way of referring to, you have to visualize in a color type of way the difference between sin and None. So you could have in any type of human being, regardless of the physical color that it is, but it's just a question of going from. Everyone understands dirtiness is black, so we understand that as sinners is related to. And he has a few different psukim over here, which express the idea of a sinner as a more of a blackish color. And we know, like we say this by the Yamin Uraim, that one who returns, right, Keshelag Yalbinu, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we ask God to make us white like snow. Ketzemer Yud should be like the wool, like clean white wool, as well as other psukim. So we know going from the color from black to white is an expression of the travel of one who goes from sinner to eventual return. That's fundamental one. Second idea related to Teshuva is famously one who's chote. Who's he chote to? His father in heaven. And when he comes back, it's not just coming back, I'm sorry. No, it's an actual relationship. It's a love that we return to. It's a full, complete love. The pasuk Shalom Shalom LaRachuk, to the one who is Rachuk uLakarov. Eventually he comes back. He's no longer distant as a Rachuk. Now he comes back. He's Karov. He's close. The Zohar talks about one who's a chote. It describes as a mashal. It's like a baby that's separated from the mother, right? Nobody's good, not the baby, not the mother. When the baby comes back, it's not just that the baby has a mother; the mother has a child. There's a love here in both directions. It's a fullness of love. And so on and so on. Haben Yakir Ephraim, the famous pasuk, right? Haben HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking about us, even though we're sinners. Haben Yakir Ephraim, Ephraim, the child of the Jewish people that's a sinner, he's Yakerli, right? He's dear to me. When I just mention him, it's so emotional, and it's always there. So can talk about the closeness that we have when we come back. The Rambam really goes in length about this. Right? There's a very strong closeness when we come back. That's the second idea. And the third idea is a famous idea from the Gemara Yuma, how great Teshuva is, right? Gedola Teshuva. What happens when a person comes back? It says that his sins, they are turned into zuchuyos, into merit. And it's clarified that that's referring to a specific way of doing Teshuva. There's two ways to do Teshuva. Sometimes one does Teshuva, it comes through fair. Sometimes a person does a higher level of Teshuva, of repenting, it comes from love. And if a person does the higher level of coming from love, then actually the sins themselves are actually counted into the merits. They turn into the merits. The pasuk says, from your makkah, from the actual hitting, from the punishment, or in this case, from the sins, arafeich is coming out, the refuah. It's not just that a person is going to sin and from there he repents. The sinning themselves is what eventually brings them to the teshuva, and that's why they're able to be merits. The pasuk mor v'halos, very nice smelling spices. Ketzios kol begidosach, kol begidosh shebegarota. What does the Medrash say? All of your betrayals that you did, kiarein kamor v'halos. They themselves are like the spices, nice smelling spices. So these are the three ideas he wants to set up for, in general way, fundamentals for Teshuva. And he shows how the orev, this is the raven, is almost in contradiction to every single one of them. In the behavior, in the way it is. How is that? So the first one, we know that the raven, Chazal say, it goes from, not from the color of what we would have about Teshuva, when it comes back, goes from a color of black to white. It actually begins, when he's born, the baby is white, and goes to black. Now, observation shows that it's not literally white, even though Chazal say that. It's more of a grayish type of color in the feathers, but regardless, it's the concept of going from a whitish, more of a whitish color to eventually after a few weeks or a few months, depending on the type of raven and the case, going from exactly the opposite direction, right? We're going from white to black. It's opposed to Teshuva. It's going. And then what else the Chazal say? We say this pasuk at the end of Tehillim. We say it every day in Pesukei de Zimra. Kadosh Baruch Hu brings livnei orev asher kra. Kadosh Baruch Hu has to bring food to the bnei orev, to the offsprings of the raven. Why does Kadosh Baruch Hu have to bring food to the offsprings of the raven? So Chazal say that Nase al banav achzari.
That's from Tehillim, isn't it?
It's from Tehillim, right? 147. all the way at the end of Tehillim. We say it in the
Yeah,
Halukas.
we say it every day.
That's right. So it's a fascinating thing that doesn't seem to be found by other types of animals and birds. Nas al banav achzari. It becomes achzari against his children. Orev. Hold on, that's the wrong Gemara. Yeah. B'shosha noladim levanimhu zonehu. At the time when the parents, the ravens, when they have their children, it hates the children. That's the expression it uses. It says it to the extent that it becomes achzari on the children, and it doesn't provide food for the child. It says in Tanachuma, when does this happen? When it sees that the child is white, it leaves them, and runs away. That's a full level of achzaris, right? Vapiru, there's a separation here between the parents and the offspring. And then it says that when they turn black, eventually over weeks and months, then the parents love them. Exactly the opposite direction of the Baal Teshuva. We're going from when the offspring is the color of white, which would be a symbolization of purity, cleanliness, right, without sin. And that's exactly when the parents, the father, the mother, that's when there's a sin, there's a hate, and they run away, they don't provide. And then when the child turns black like the parents, so now that's a symbolization of hate, of sin. There's a love. And that's when the parents bring back the child. Exactly the opposite of correspond with us when we do Teshuva, is when we're black, there's a distance. And when we turn white, we turn to the white, the symbolization of the nikayon, the cleanliness, the Teshuva. There we end up having the closeness with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Just to read the language here of Rashi and Ksuvos, the Gemara is talking of a man who was not providing for his children. And it says, one of the Amoraim said that this man, you should pull him out to the street and you should announce, Orva bai bane vahu gavra lo bai bane. The raven wants children. This man doesn't even want children. To which the Gemara responds, Va'orva bai bane? Ravens want children? Faksiv, lebnei orev asher yikro. See in the pasuk that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God has to provide for the children. So apparently the parents of the raven's parents are not providing for the children. To which the Gemara says, Lo kasha ha b'chivri ha b'uchmi. The difference is, are we discussing white ravens or black ravens? And Rashi explains, Uchmi kishagadol, this exact point, when the offspring, when the baby grows, mashchir, it becomes the color black, ve'im v'avo avimosam. And the parents love the child, avol matchilosan, originally lavanim v'sonimosam, they're white and they hate them. And this is really hard to understand because observation shows this is not true. The parents are actually pretty dedicated to the offsprings. So I'm not here, right, that's what it seems. The ravens are just like any other being. So I'm not here to explain how it works. It's very possible it's not on a physical observation that we're able to see. It's potentially, you could say it's on a more spiritual level, something about the tuchuna of the nefesh of the orev, and something which we can't necessarily see. Might be there's definitely something that Chazal are saying, and something that we express in the pasuk.
Yeah, resentment to having kids, like the tzirka of having to feed them, so the ravens could initially be not so thrilled to have them, and then
maybe it's like that.
Maybe, and then ultimately they.
Maybe there's some aspect of their behavior that's, I don't know if they could be like frustrated about.
Right. I actually saw a little bit discussing that, but eventually they take care of the child, and I guess it happens so quickly that to see the idea of they're not providing is so hard. As much as there's the frustration, I guess so.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think about.
Yeah.
But that's what Chazal say. And the third aspect we discussed, which is that the Baal Teshuva, his Averos actually turn into Zechuyos when he does the full Teshuva. So there, what do Chazal say? Really, really interesting. The Bnei Orev, Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oseh Satan Chuma. What does the HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? Motzim mitzvos shelahem yitushim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu pulls out from their waist these worms, uporchim aleim v'ochlim, and they fly, and the children eat. Umisham, from those worms, he mashchirim. That's how they turn from white to black.
Wait, what's this worm thing? I don't understand this worm thing.
Meaning, it's an explanation that Tanchuma is saying for the pasuk that Kadosh Baruch Hu provides food. How does HaKadosh Baruch Hu provide food? So the way that the Tanchuma says it is that from the waste of the actual baby, there's worms that HaKadosh Baruch Hu pulls out, and they eat the worms, and the worms eventually help them turn black. That's the way that it expresses it. Which again, it doesn't seem seems to be a fairy tale, and not really realistic in the way we can see things. But this is the Tanchuma in some element. In their Techuna, it's in this way, and this is exactly the reverse of what we said. When it comes to someone who does Teshuva, what does he do? His averos that he has, they themselves turn into the zchuyos. And here it's the reverse. From the tsoa, which he brings, there's a number of psukim where waste is an expression of symbolizing sin. From the sin himself, they turn black. They're going from white to black from their what comes out from them, from their sin. So that's the three fundamentals that he wants to show how the orev actually is in contradiction. And when we look at the orev, when we see the raven, we're actually able to appreciate these different points and come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the proper way. And eventually, when we're able to bring hashpah to the orev through that, we're able to actually bring some level of inspiration from a godliness inspiration that to give existence to the orev.
Hashpah means inspiration.
Yeah. So that's on the more general idea of tshuva. And now let's come back to the specifics that we discussed in this bracha, the three different elements of tshuva that seem to be brought up. And Rabbi Yeshua does a very interesting classification to...
Is that the book? Is that Rabbi Yeshua, the book?
Yes, the book we're using is Beis Tefillah, written by Rabbi Yeshua Heller. So I just referred to him as Rabbi Yeshua.
Okay.
So he takes man, we have to take man, and we have to break him up into different aspects, elements. And from there, we're able to work on sins that relate to each aspect. And from there, we could discuss the Teshuva that relates to each of the sins that relates to each aspect of man. So here he goes. Man is a build-up of, we know, right, the neshama and the guf, right? There's the soul and there's the body. The way that he wants to classify it is the seichel, the intellect, which we know is a function of the soul. Animals, they have a body, they've got the guf, they even may have emotions, but the soul they don't have, and therefore there's some level of intellect, but the level of intellect that we know of man, which Onkelos brings out as Mamalala, he's able to speak, is which a function of the higher level of intellect that man has, that's something that's only by men. So that's the seichel, which we'll call it the neshama seichel, right, the soul with the intellect. And from there we have the guf, we got the soul, and then there's a force that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into man that's able to hold together these two seemingly impossibilities. They don't go together, they're opposites. The neshama, the soul, which is a chelek, a portion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way, and the guf, which comes from the physical world. And there's this force that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is put in man that's able to hold them together. Now, if we want to understand how sin, chet, that man does, affects the human being, we really always have to classify what type of sin are we dealing with. Are we dealing with a sin which is targeting the seichel, the intellect, the soul? Are we dealing with a sin which is actually damaging to the guf? Or are we dealing with a sin, he even classifies sins which are damaging to the force which collects the two together, brings it together. So Rabbi Yeshua wants to bring it out in a very interesting way. We know that if we could look at three sins in the Torah and say these three sins embody all the sins in the Torah, and each one is directly connected in contrast to all these three different aspects of man, which three sins would we bring out? So he wants to say the three cardinal sins, right? We've got the shvichas damim, gilui arayos, and avodah zarah, are the three sins which really talk to each aspect. Avodah zarah, right? Avodah zarah, serving with one's intellect the wrong force, not God, but azara, some other force in the world, and that's damaging to the intellect. You've got the gilui arayos, immoral relations, and that's the guf, that's the desires. Desires are a function of one's physicality. Animals also have that. And the last one, Shvichus Domim, is pretty obvious now that he classified it as the connection between the guf and the neshama. What is the one act in the Torah that's a sin that actually pulls apart the neshama and the guf? Right? That's Shvichus Domim, murder. So those are the three sins that really embody all sins in this way of looking at it. And he would like, Rabbi Yeshua wants to show how the orev, the raven, Midrashim speak, actually is a contradiction and has the sins of every single one of these. How's that? So let's take one at a time. So we've got a very interesting Midrash, how the raven actually was he carried the Nachash, right? The Nachash who, by Adam and Chava, the Nachash told Chava to eat from the Eitz Hadas. He carried the word of the Nachash, says the Medrash, to Chava. Whatever the reason is why the Nachash wasn't able to carry over his own word to Chava, it needed the help of the orev, the raven. Va'ofa shamayim yolich es kol Nachash, rachiv al kol da'orva. And it continues with this different aspects of the raven that when the Nachash was telling the Chava the following, from this tree, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God ate, and from there he was able to create the worlds. He says that's the epitome of kfira. You're not believing in God because you're saying that God is a product of a tree. But God created the tree. God created everything. So I'm not relying on anything. Kover Beker. So that concept of Kover Beker, it was the raven that pulled it out to Chava. Right? So you see it right there, the orev personifies this aspect of Avodah Zarah. Second Medrash he brings over here is Shvichus Damim, murder. Where's the Medrash that the raven has anything to do with murder? Such an interesting Medrash. Says the Yalkut, Cain killed Hevel. When the raven saw that Cain didn't know what to do with Hevel after he killed him, a dead body. What do you do with a dead body? No one ever did kvura yet. Ma'asa, what did the raven do? Harag echa mechaverov. He killed another raven. V'chafer ba'aretz, and he showed Cain what to do. He dug in the land. V'tamnu le'enav, and then he covered him over. So the raven here personifies murder. And the last one we've got over here is Gilei Arayos. Where do we have the raven immoral relations? Go to the Teva. What does it say? That all the animals, they follow the rule that was given over to them by the Teva, that there's no mating, except for the orev. The raven mated with its mate. What does the Medrash say? I'll find this here. Alright, I can't find this right now, but that's the Medrash. I'll have to find it. Here it is. It says Chazal, Echom Mishlosh, there was really three. Echom Mishlosh Shimshu B'Teva, there were three that were Shimish B'Teva, Varei, Nenash, that's the orev. The orev was one of the ones that had relations, or whatever that means, with birds, came together with the mate in the Teva. So it personifies these three aspects. Once again, it's a contradiction to...
Who had relations with the raven?
With its mate, with Shimshu.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we have these three different aspects of man, and we know that every sin is now going to be classified into one of these three. Is it damaging to the seichel, to the intellect, to the guf, or to the force which connects the two? So now let's discuss the teshuva from these three different aspects. How do you get out of this? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us three different ways, each one talking to each of these aspects of sin. Limud Torah. First one is Torah. Torah, one who learns Torah, one who toils in it and works in it. So which aspect would we connect that to? The seichel, the intellect. There's sinning in the intellect, and Teshuva, the way you come out of that is focus your mind and your intellect on Torah. The second is mitzvos, right? We call them mitzvos, and mitzvos are something which we do with our bodies. So the mitzvos are our bodies, it's going to target the sins that are related to the guf, the body of man. And the third one is other types of mitzvos which are relatable to the connection between the body and the soul, the intellect. And he happens to enumerate over here. We've got birchas and ahenen, right? Brachos, which are on food. So food is what person intakes, and from there he's able to stay alive, keep the soul with the body. So the bracha is something which is related to that. You make a bracha on food, a blessing on food. He has tefillah. When one davens in tefillah, we don't call that an action that he's doing with his body specifically. One is specifically with the intellect, is both together. He has his whole body ready for tefillah. He's standing in a certain way, he's sitting in a certain way. However, he positions his body to serve a God in the proper way. And then from there he's able to bring out with his words the proper prayer. And so on and so on. So we've got these three different aspects. Just let's go back to the bracha now and see how these three fit in perfectly. Hashiveinu Avinu l'sayrasecha. V'karveinu Malkeinu lavodasecha v'achzreinu b'shuva shalema l'fanecha. So the first one, what jumps out? Torah. The first one is Torah. The second one is avoda. So we said Torah is the teshuva of the intellect. It's going to talk to intellect sinning. Hashiveinu is bring us back from sinning with our intellect to your Torah. The Torah is the opposite of the sin of intellect. V'karveinu, bring us close, lavodasecha, to your work. That's mitzvos. The work is the actions of the body. Why in the first one is Avinu and the second one is Malkeinu? So we could understand that very well. Avinu, our Father, right? The neshama, the soul, is a portion of God. God blew into us, as the Apostle said. V'yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. It was from Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu is our Father. Shlosha shuvtim yishlad in the Gemara says 3 different partnerships in the creation of the baby. What does it say? Kadosh Baruch Hu gives the soul. The father and the mother give the physical aspects. So when we're discussing Hashiveinu l'sarasach, we're asking God, bring us back to your Torah. There we refer to Kadosh Baruch Hu as God as Avinu. Our Father, bring us back. V'karveinu Malkeinu lavodasecha. We talk about the mitzvos, which are actually targeting the sins of the guf, right? The body of man, the physical part of man, Malkeinu. God is our king. The king, right? The physical body of man is the desires, and the desires pulling one away from the ruchnius, from the spirituality of God. So in that aspect, God is Malkeinu. He's our God, is our king, the king that rules upon us. So v'karveinu Malkeinu lavodasecha. And the last one, Hashiveinu b'shuva shalema l'fanecha. So he says really interesting. This one is supposed to be parallel to the aspect of sin that is in the force of connecting soul and body. How is that expressed? If you notice, it doesn't say Hashiveinu b'shuva shlema eilecha, to you. That's what you expect. Hashiveinu, what is the passage? Hashiveinu Hashem eilecha v'nashuva. Bring us back to you. It says, Hashiveinu, return us with complete teshuva lefanecha, before you. Not to you, but before you.
Is this the daily dagmi you're reading?
Yeah, it's in the bracha, this fifth bracha of the Amidah. So why do we say lefanecha, before you, not to you? The answer is because we're not expressing bring us back to God. That's the general idea. But more specifically, lefanecha, it's the connection between the soul and the body, which has become separated through sin. Which is lefanecha, before God, hachzreinu, bring us, our two aspects, soul and body, before you, bring us together. B'teshuva shlema, with a full teshuva. And he brings out that there's many sources that when any type of sin really happens, any type of sin is really a break between the soul and the body. There's a eventual more sin and more sin and more sin, and then there's less ability for the soul to infiltrate and create a difference in the body, in the physicality. And that's what we're asking for. Kadosh Baruch Hu, bring us back and let our soul actually come into our body, which is the way it's supposed to be. The fullness, the Teshuva Shlema, with the full return. And from there we're able to change the physical with the spiritual. Alright, so that is the bracha of Hashiveinu. Let us stop here as I need to go to the next share. And we will continue next week, Be'ez Hashem, with the next bracha, which is the classically identified, the ostrich is the sixth bird, Pasayana, and Slicha, Mechila, very, very interesting as well. So stay tuned.
With the ostrich, okay.
Yes.